Great, bonus yad. Who doesn't like a bonus yad? I'm gonna put that there so I don't lose it.
Careless is how you pronounce your surname?
It is.
Fantastic.
But you know what? You can say whatever you want, and I'll probably respond to it.
Well, that's very lovely. Thank you for being so accommodating.
Up to and including, hey you, stop singing.
You will not hear me say that. Maybe, hey, you, can you sing something? Maybe that. Maybe that.
Wait, Julie, with Baruch She'amar, you guys are doing the three-piece transition there, right?
Baruch
No,
She'amar.
was
No,
that Nisim
that's
B'chol
Nisim
Yom?
B'chol Yom.
Okay.
But Nisim B'chol Yom, I'm realizing they just do it with us the whole time. So it's
Okay.
just us back and forth
Okay,
eating.
perfect.
So I'll start just to give you a break from the previous thing, and then you TikTok with me, and they're doing it the whole
Okay,
time.
and then I'll just come up when you guys are wrapping it up
when
and
we're
then say,
done.
okay.
Yeah. That's
Cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. That way there's somebody leading. I realized
Yeah.
what I said was super confusing. We don't actually do it that way.
Cool.
So sorry for that.
And then with the
I knew what it meant, so
Yeah.
I've been in places that do it that way.
Oh,
so.
okay, got it. So no, but this they like to run, so they don't want to be told like
totally
I
fine.
can't do this without the other one.
Do we want to be starting based on it being 10:16?
Yeah, sure. Shall we?
But like, if you have more things to say, I just wasn't sure how
I know.
timely a congregation this is.
Like we try to do 10:15, but like 10:15 would be like 10:18, but like by 10:18 we're starting.
The place that I'm currently at is like,
Machmir.
if it is 10:15 and 3 seconds, someone is unhappy.
Oh goodness gracious, Ignatius. Ariel, why don't you start with us so I can introduce you?
Excuse me, are you going to do introductions before anything gets started?
I will do introductions once things have gotten started.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Depends how you do.
Henry likes to be my brain in case I don't have one.
So you help me rehearse the bar.
The bar.
Request that.
And well, you're the guy who knows. Page 74.
Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, vani berov chastecha, avo vetecha, eshtacha ve'el hechal kodshecha, meiratecha, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, Adonai ahavti me'on betecha, umekom mishkan kivotecha, mishkan kivotecha, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, vani eshtachaveh vekra evrecha lifnei Adonai osi, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenatecha Yisrael, ma tovu. miskenatecha Yisrael, v'ani tefilati lecha, Adonai et ratzon, Elohim merov chastecha, Elohim merov chastecha, Haneni be'emet yishecha, ma tovu, ma tovu, Alecha Yaakov, Mishkenatecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, Alecha Yaakov, Mishkenatecha Yisrael.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
You may notice that there are some new faces in the front of the room. This is really a Shehechianu moment for Congregation Road of Sholem. I want to issue a welcome both to Justin Callis, our new cantorial intern, who will be with us periodically throughout the summer and will begin in earnest with the high holidays in the fall. We know you're very excited for that, Justin. No pressure, no stress, so easy. And then on my left is Ariel Stein. And Ariel is our summer rabbinic resident, and she has been, in her words, lurking, not working, for the period of May and June. She's here because she's learning about the inner workings of a large urban synagogue during her time at HUC, which is going to conclude a year from now when she is ordained. She has spent most of her professional time working in Hillels and in small congregations. And so as a way of just broadening her sense of what's out there in the world, as she prepares to enter the job market, she's here through the Tisch Fellowship, which really focuses on helping clergy think about innovating in Reform synagogue life throughout their studies and well beyond. And we are so grateful to have you here. Ariel's going to be leading part of the service in a few minutes, so thank you for helping join us in the beginning. I'm going to let you sit so that you can rest for a moment. We are reading Parshat Naso, and also welcome to Daniel. Thank you for bringing our music and helping elevate our worship. And also to Henry, who always makes sure that we're all organized and have what we need. So we are in Parshat Naso, which is a very lengthy chapter, and it's lengthy in part because we have this litany toward the end of the Parsha where the tabernacle has been completed, and we are sanctifying the altar, and the chief of all 12 tribes is supposed to come forward and offer gifts to help sanctify the altar, and every single chief brings the exact same things. And so each tribe gets 6 verses, a total of 72 verses. The only thing that changes is the name of the chief and the name of the tribe, and that is really one of the reasons that this becomes such a long parsha. But I spoke about that last night at confirmation when we were celebrating our confirmands, and really just thinking about both the tension of being of equal worth in the eyes of God, and how that idea of sameness is so important because we have to divide equally the responsibilities of what it means to be in community, but also celebrating very much the individuality that each of our confirmands brought to our year and to our community. This morning, what I want to just focus in for a second is Birkat Kohanim. We had the privilege of conveying that blessing on the confirmands last night, and Birkat Kohanim is my favorite job as a rabbi, really, to be able to offer Birkat Kohanim at baby namings, to be able to offer it at B'nai Mitzvah, and especially under the chuppah, and at other life cycle moments. It's a privilege because it's really the time where I understand most profoundly what it means to be Klei Kodesh, which means a vessel of God, a vessel of holiness, because those words which come out of this week's Torah portion are really meant to help imbue this nation of Israel with a sense that it's within their hands to convey blessing, that this is not something that just comes from some high echelon of the community, that each person is not only capable of giving but also receiving blessing. But if you read Rashi's commentary, Rashi, our 11th century commentator with quite a sense of humor, what he thinks the blessing means is actually quite hysterical. So, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. We say, may God bless you and keep you. He says, may God make you wealthy and give you lots of property, and may God prevent anybody from taking it Like, that's what he believes that it means. So, Yavarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. May God shine a friendly face on you. May God always kind of give you the benefit of the doubt and be kind to you, is what he says. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God suppress God's anger. That's what he believes the conclusion of that blessing is. And we always focus on this idea of God's presence and God giving us the gift of peace. And there's something to be made about this idea that Rashi is aware of a God that can be quite vindictive, of a God that can be rebuking and punishing. And so his reading of this idea of what it means for God to give us peace is for God to be able to suppress the impulse to punish. And it's just such a different rendering of this blessing that we give out at all of these beautiful moments and life cycle moments. And so I bring that forward to invite us, however it is that you have heard the blessing translated for you thus far. We typically offer it in English, in Hebrew, and then we translate it. But actually to say that there are quite a number of ways to translate what we want to receive from Birkat Kohanim, and also what it is that the clergy person or the family member who's offering, what are they imbuing into that blessing? When I give it to a B'nai Mitzvah, I think I mean it differently than when I give it to my own children on Friday night. I want something different for a 13-year-old than I might want for a 6-year-old. And we all, I think, should remember that when we're offering blessing, even when we're using the same words, that we're empowered to fill those words with hopes and aspirations and dreams that can change and evolve, and that we can also look to our commentators if we need some inspiration for what to look for. Our service is going to continue on page 78, Elohai Neshama.
Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi tehorahi. Ata verata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. Ve'ata meshamera, meshamra bekirbi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi tehorai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sach v'bina lehavchin ben yom uvein laila.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivri.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, roka haaretz al hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei kaver.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten le'aif koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hama'avir sheina me'enai utnuma me'afal pai.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tzelem Elohim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani bat chorin.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara.
Amen.
ברוך שאמר והיה העולם, ברוך הוא. ברוך עושה וראשית, ברוך אומר ועושה. ברוך גוזר מקיים, ברוך מרחם על הארץ, ברוך מרחם על הבריות, ברוך משלם שכר טוב לרעיו, ברוך האלוהים וקיים לנצח. ברוך פודה ומציל, ברוך שמו. בשבחות ובזמרות נגנות כאן נשבחך ונברכך, ונזכיר שמך ולהמליכך מלכנו אלוהינו. יחיד כעולמים, מלך משובח ומפואר, עד שמו הגדול. ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מהולל בתשבחות.
96.
המזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. המזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, על העשור ועל הנבל, על היגיון בכינור. המזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. כי שמחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך רנן. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. המזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. עליון.
Page 100. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 el bekocho, hallelujah, bekiauzo, hallelujah, bigvorotav, hallelujah, kerov gudlo, hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 betega shofar, hallelujah, benevel vechinor, hallelujah, betofo machol, hallelujah, beminim veugav, hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Betzil tzalei shema, hallelujah. Betzil tzalei trua. Kol anshama tehallelujah, kol anshama tehallelujah. Kol hanashama tehallelujah, hallelujah. Kol hanashama tehallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
I invite folks to rise as is comfortable, page 108 for the Baruch. And please join me as loudly as you'd like to. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch
Adonai, hamevorach, hamevorach leolam vaed. Hamevorach, hamevorach leolam vaed.
We may be seated. And we turn to page 110, and we read aloud in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvoreh choshech, oseh shalom uvoreh et hakol, hameir la'aretz uledarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid, ma'aseh v'reshit, ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, mle'ah ha'aretz kaninecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, va'al me'orei or she'asita yefarucha selah, or chadash al Zion ta'ir, v'nizkeh kulanu mehera le'oro, Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'me'orot. Praised are you, Divine One, Creator of heavenly light. We rise as we are able for the Shema on 114.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leolam.
116.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם. בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשופך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
122, Mi Chamocha, the Song of the Sea.
It's even more fun when you sing along with joy. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. שיר החדשה שיבחו גאולים, לשמחה על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 צו ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופדיינו ממך יהודת וישראל עלינו אדוני צבאות שמה קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
124, as we begin the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai titach ufiyai tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ahel Agadol, Agibor v'Hanora, Elyon, Yomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geulah livnei bneihem, L'man shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah, Rav lehoshia, Morin atah, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech ulim, Omat yirachim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha מקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאיך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו, אדיר אדירנו, אדוני אדוננו, מתיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, אחד אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מלכנו, ומושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אלוהיך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה, 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 לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נכניס, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Continue silently. Please feel free to continue praying your Amidah at your own pace. We'll turn to page 140 for Sim Shalom.
שים שלום, טובה וברכה. שים שלום, טובה וברכה. שים שלום, טובה וברכה. שים שלום, טובה וברכה. חן וחסד, חן וחסד ורחמים. חן וחסד, חן וחסד ורחמים, ורחמים. שים שלום, טובה עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עמך שים שלום. טובה וברכה. שים שלום, טובה וברכה. ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
We'll take a moment to silently meditate and continue prayer at your own pace before we move into Oseh Shalom.
לרצון אמרי פי יהיו לרצון אמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי וגואלי יהיו לרצון אמרי פי עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן ואמרו
That was very beautiful. So, we will take a moment as we transition into today's Torah service. Who can remind us of the Parsha? Yes, excellent. I'm so impressed. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Ariel Stein. As we said earlier, I'm shadowing Rabbi Carol for the summer. I'm a rising fifth year at HUC down in the village. So, as we just said, today we're going to read Torah portion Naso, which means count. It's found in the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, chapter 4 through 7, and our Haftarah is found in Judges 13. Torah portion Naso deals with the counting of the Levi'im, the Levites, as relates to the building of the tabernacle, God's dwelling place, while the Israelites are in the desert. Each subgroup within the tribe has its own role, both in constructing and in transporting the tabernacle from place to place. Naso also deals with the sota, the expected adulteress ritual, as well as the laws of the Nazir, a person, male or female, who takes a vow abstaining from drinking wine, cutting their hair, and coming into contact with the dead. Through this vow, this person becomes holy to God in a unique way. This vow also elevates said person to the status of priest, no matter what tribal background they come from. As we said, Naso also gifts us the words of the priestly blessing, which God shares with Aharon, instructing him to bless the people with it. We continue to use this blessing ritually and in family settings today. Like our Torah portion, our Haftarah also deals with the Nazir, introducing Samson. Do folks know the story of Samson? Yes, no, maybe so. All right. A man who was a lifelong Nazir and well known for his riotous love story with Delilah and his long, 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 long hair. This text complements and complicates Naso, providing a fleshed out story of a particular Nazir, making the people who take this vow real to us as readers and listeners of the text. While this Torah portion does contain disturbing content, the Sotar ritual, only counting men among the Levites, things that are certainly worth wrestling with, it also introduces two ideas that are particularly powerful for readers today. First, each subgroup of Levites has a unique role in the transport of the tabernacle. Although these people are part of one Israelite tribe, these roles reveal different strengths, attributes, and gifts that people bring to making sacred space. Second, Israelites of all genders have the opportunity to take a Nazirite vow, if they so choose. Uncommon in Torah, this provides an equal spiritual opportunity, even if that comes along with the need to avoid a hairdresser at all costs. For the remainder of the Shabbat, I invite us all to contemplate the gifts that we bring to today's tabernacle, the world that we live in. I also invite us to focus on the spiritual opportunities that we individually have access to. May we use these gifts to build sacred space on earth. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Page 244.
Please rise as you are able as the ark is open.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai vein kemastecha malachotecha malachot kol olamim umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch leolam va'ed Adonai hoz le'amo yitein Adonai varech et amo v'shalom Avarachamim et hiva v'irtzonecha et Zion tivnei chomot Yerushalayim hivecha levad batachno melech el ram v'nitza Adon olamim Ki mitzion tetzei Torah Ki mitzion tetzei Torah Udevor Adonai Merushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael Mikdosha Torah. Shabbat Shalom. Page 245. Please rise as you are able as the ark is open. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai vein kemastecha malachotecha malachot kol olamim umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai varech et amo v'shalom Avarachamim et hiva v'irtzonecha et Zion tivnei chomot Yerushalayim hivecha levad batachno melech el ram v'nitza Adon olamim Ki mitzion tetzei Torah Ki mitzion tetzei Torah Udevor Adonai Merushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael Mikdosha Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Iti, Ureromema Shemo Yachdav. Lecha Adonai HaGedula VeHaGevura VeHaTeferet VeHaNetzach VeHaHod. Ki kol bashamayim uvaretz, Ki kol bashamayim uvaretz. Lecha Adonai HaMamlecha VeHaMitnaseh lechol erosh. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu, Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu.
Please be seated.
Ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho.
So as Ariel reminded us, we are in Parshat Naso, and I'm just pulling up the page numbers for you in the Plough commentary. The first aliyah will be from the beginning of the Parsha on page 923. And chanting for us this morning will be Francine Lahat, and she is chanting in honor of her 25th anniversary as bat mitzvah, as adult bat mitzvah. So we are also going to call her up for the aliyah to celebrate this incredible milestone. Na la'amod ha'aliyah harishona.
Baruch Hu El Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai havarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bacha Banu Mikol Ha'amin V'nata Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Do you want to stand on these? Okay. That's okay.
Say Amen in my head.
You can say it out loud. That's all right.
I have to say Amen. Vayedaber Adonai El Moshe Lemor. Naso et Rosh B'nei Gershon Gam Hem Levit Avotam Lenishpichotam Mi Ben Shloshim Shana V'mala Ad Ben Hamishim Shana Tifkohotam Kol Haba Litzvot Tzava La'avod Avodah Be'ohel Moed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher kochech. Mazel tov.
Thank you. I have to tell you, the first time I read this was the first time I ever looked in the Torah. We had rehearsal on the Thursday night with Cantor Don Gurney. And I was the first one to read. I chanted the first line, and I stopped. There was silence. And he said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I can't find the next line." He said, "Did you memorize it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Just keep going. Just keep going."
Wise words.
Just keep
going. When in doubt, just keep chanting Torah.
But since then, I realized that I know the words. So I have to look at the words to read them. But that was like, where do I go?
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yasher kochech. Mazel tov. So I actually think Francine's words are a beautiful frame for thinking about Misha Berach, because when we pray for healing, one of the things we're praying for is for the people that we love who are struggling to keep going, whatever it is that they face. If they're not sure where to find their next step, if they're not sure what's to come, if there is uncertainty, if there's a sense that they are disoriented, what we pray is for them to find their way, maybe to trust their gut, to lean on their community, to know that we are here praying for them. At this time, we're thinking of Sandy Sarabin, Tracy Lustig, Cassie Lustig, Michael Umans, Eli Morrison, Paulette Kohan, Patricia Horn, Stephen Schwinder, Perry Soskin, Roy Soskin, Jane Wisen, Lori Weinberg, Richard Carver, Shira Aliza, Robert Appel, Zvi Leschetz, Mark Miller, Ellen Kirshner, Bobby Waldman, Mark Margulies, Debbie Provis, Paul Biddleman, Joseph Abada, Sydney Spano, Tom Lee, Ricky Dessin, Benita Ganot, Jimmy Berghoff, Harriet Feldman, Eric Alper, Peter Boritz, Pauline Rothstein, Eric Gruthuis, Brian Altman, Ari Ginor, Phyllis Eidelberg. Are there additional individuals you're praying for this Shabbat? We continue with Misha Berach, the middle of page 253.
Bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
We wish them wholeness, shlemut, and peace. Shalom. We're going to return to our Torah service, and Naomi's going to be chanting, also celebrating an important anniversary, 12 years since her adult bat mitzvah. She'll be chanting the Maftir, so that's going to bring us to page 936. That's Numbers chapter 7, verses 80, beginning with verse 87. So just turn forward to page 936. And for the honor of the Aliyah, we'd like to invite up Sandy Abramson. Nala Amod, Aliyah Hashniya.
If I may, I'll just say one couple of words. I want to just thank Julie for inviting me up here. It's always an honor and a blessing to come and have an aliyah. There are several people in my family who are anticipating having some medical procedures and surgeries in the next few weeks. So this is very nice for me to come up here with the open Torah and for luck for them. Okay.
Just what, do you want to find it first?
That is what I'm attempting to do for you.
Okay.
It's in the middle of a paragraph. There it is. Sorry. Right at the top.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Kol habakar laholah shnei masar parim elim shnei masar kivasim b'nei shana shani masar umichatam usireizim shnei masar lichatat v'chol bakar sevach hashalaim Esrim varba parim elim shishim atudim shishim kivasim b'nei shana shishim sod chanukad hamizbeach acharei mashachoto uvavo Moshe Elohel Moed l'daber ito vayizmach et hakol Midaber elav me'al hakaporet asher al aron ha'idut mi bein shnei hakeruvim vayidaber elav.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam v'tan B'Tolkeinu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Come through everything with the homeless and health.
Can I say one thing? And Sandy's another adult.
So,
Bat mitzvah.
so that leads me into the next piece. So I'm going to invite Francine back up, and I'm going to have Sandy stay here. Is anyone else a member of the alumni group of our adult B'nai Mitzvah? Is anybody else in this room? So Arlene, come forward. Sarah, please. Steve. So I've been reminded that Birkat Kohanim is a blessing that we can offer at all times. And it feels appropriate that since this is such a significant milestone for so many in our community, and we are reading Parshat Naso, that we should be able to offer Birkat Kohanim on all of those who are marking this milestone. And maybe they can inspire forward anybody in this room who's been flirting with the idea of enrolling in Adult B'nai Mitzvah. And it is now a privilege to invite up to lift and dress the Torah, Harvey Ganot and Myra Durkach. Nala Amon, Hamagbiya V'Hagolele. Please rise as you are able.
Adonai beyad Moshe.
Please be seated. So we are turning now to the Haftorah, and Naomi, our superstar chanter, is going to be offering us verses from Judges. Thank you, Naomi. That's going to be beginning on page 947. And then when she picks up in 21 at the end, 21, she told me is kind of in a weird place. So it's not right at the top. Verse 21 is kind of a little bit ways down on page 949, but Naomi's always good about giving you directions for when to flip forward. So just a reminder, Ariel introduced this already, but the Haftorah brings us to the book of Judges because in the book of Judges, we feature the story of Samson, Shimshon, who is a Nazir. And he's a Nazir, actually, because God tells his mother to make him one. So we have another story of a fertility issue. We have Manoah and his unnamed wife. The book of Judges takes place soon after the conquest of Canaan. So this is the book subsequent to the book of Joshua. So we've gotten out of the Torah and now we're in the prophets. And we are facing this enemy, all the Philistines, and the Israelites are in need of some strength and some blessing. And you have this man and his wife, and they can't conceive a child. And so they appeal to God, and God sends an angel who says to them, if your wife follows these following instructions, not only is she going to give birth, but she is going to give birth to a baby who will help bring peace and rest to Israel. And so not only is Samson going to be a Nazirite, but through his birth, the Israelites are going to know further conquest of the land, and that he is foretelling that. And what does she have to do? She has to abstain from wine. She can't, I don't know if it says that she can't cut her own hair, but she is told really to observe the laws of a Nazirite, making herself a Nazirite. What's interesting about the text is that Manoah appeals to the angel and says to the angel, tell us how to raise this child. And the angel, in this interesting implicit kind of rebuke to Manoah, says, here's what your wife needs to do. And basically saying, Manoah, this isn't your job. This is her. She's taking on this role and responsibility. She's the one who can't have the baby. And I'm actually, I'm not talking to you, basically, as the angel's reply. And you have this really beautiful instance of the woman not only being empowered to carry out all of the responsibilities to make this miracle come to pass on this holiness to her child, but she also gets to name him, and she names him Shimshon. And one of the commentaries says that he's named Shimshon for Shemesh, for light, because when they gazed at the angel, they gazed upon light, and their path forward was illuminated. And so I think Ariel's point is really important, that a lot of the times when we think about these roles of people taking on vows, that there's kind of an abstraction to that. We see them kind of as ascetic. We see them as maybe outside of humanity or elevated. But this is a story of another human being who's trying his best and stumbling forward. And so we see the idea of a Nazir, the rules of which are articulated in Parshat Naso, and we will look at them closely in today's text study. We're going to think a lot about grapes and why grapes are such a problem. But we see that articulated in the Parsha, and then we have the story of Samson to actually further illustrate for us what does this vow mean and look like as we see it lived out by this man. So again, page 947. Thank you, Naomi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ritzah b'divrahem hanemarim behemet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo v'mvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek v'yehi ish echad mitzerah mimishpachat Adoni u'shmo Manoach v'hishto akara v'lo yalada v'yera malach Adonai el ha'ishta v'yomer Eleha hinena et akara v'lo yalad v'harit v'yalat bein v'hata yishma rina v'al tishtiyan v'sheichar v'al tochli kol tamei ki hinachara v'yolad bein umara lo yahaleh arosho ki nazir Elohim yeh hanahar min habaten vehu yachel lehoshia Yisrael b'yad Pelishtim. Vatavo ha'isha vatomer lehisha lemor isha Elohim ba'elai umorehu kimare malach Elohim nora meod velo shilitihu el mizehu vel shemo ad hayom hagidli vayomer li hinachara v'yolad bein v'hatal tishti yahan v'sheichar v'hotochli kol tumah ki nazir Elohim yeh hanahar min habetem ad yom moto. Now the following page. V'lo yasaf od mahalach Adonai leherao el Manoach ve'el ishto ahaz yada Manoach ki malach Adonai hu vayomer Manoach el ishto mot namud ki Elohim ra'inu vatomer lo ishto lu chafetz Adonai lamitenu lo lakach miyadenu olach umincha v'lo hiranu et kol ele v'charet kol hishmiyanu kazot vatelet haisha bein vatikra et shemo Shimshon vayigdal hanahar vayvarechehu Adonai vatechel ruach Adonai lefahamo b'machane Dan ben Sarah uven Eshtaol. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam kol tolamim sadik b'chol dorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'osei ha'medaber kayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek al ha'torah v'al avodah v'al ha'neviim v'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenetata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha v'limnucha lechavod u'tefaret al ha'kol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach u'mavarachim otach yitbarach shimcha b'yefiko chai tamid le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat
Amen.
We're going to invite the community to please rise as you are able as we return the Torah to the Ark, page 256. We remain standing as we are able and turn to page 282 for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני אל מלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
As we approach now the mourner's Kaddish, we acknowledge those of you who are here remembering a loved one, whether they died recently or at this time in years past. We pray not only that the words of the mourner's Kaddish act as an anchor for you in memory and in love, but also that being here with this community, surrounded by your fellow community members, allows you to feel that you're not alone as you walk the path of grief, that we are here alongside you, and that we are also curious and grateful to know the stories of those that you love and remember, just about their lives and the ways that they've impacted you. And so for anybody here who is remembering a loved one, a nice way to spend Kiddush in that time where we're just kibitzing outside is to talk a little bit about whoever it is that you're remembering, if you want to share a memory. We're going to begin with those recently departed. If you hear the name of a loved one that you're remembering, you can rise as you are able, affirming your memory and your presence. You can also put a stone on slate here as a ritual of memorial. In those in the recently departed, the first 7 days or the first 30 days, we're remembering Laura Pinkney Zakin, Sarah Delson, Louise Weisbord, Candy Wasser, Rosalie Wright, Susan Baumgarten, Bert Bitterman, Roe Mandel, Harold L. Sokoloff. Is anyone here in the period of Shiva or Shloshim? Is anyone here in the period of Shana, the first year of mourning? We can, oh yes, Sandy. We continue with those whose yahrzeits we commemorate this Shabbat: Barbara Abrams, Nettie Apfelbaum, Dorothy Aronson, H. Thomas Axt, Dr. Harvey Baker, Carol Barish, Carolyn Barish, David Ben-Ami, Arthur Aaron Berenstein, Helen Kaplan, Ada David, Wayne Davis, Mildred DeSherer, John Distel, Hillard Elitzer, Dr. Richard Ellis, Marcel Engler, Carl Feith, Rose Finkelstein, Gary Fraden, Stephen Gelberd, Fred Gerson, Dr. Seymour Halpern, George Harkavy, Frank Hushmal, Bertha Horowitz, Henry Hyman, Hannah M. Isaacs, Paul Kaiser, Rose Katz, Dr. Sidney D. Leader, Flora Levy, Jack Levy, Robert A. Levy, Sidney Lieberman, Rose Lipschitz, Gregory Litinsky, Aaron Loeb, Joan Betty Lurie, Samuel Marks, Jean Meller, Michael Mendel, Ann Nemser, Erna Newberger, Simon Savitz, Fanny Schechner, Morton Shotland, Hannah Schupper, Louis Siegel, Robert Siegel, Henry Seldner, Martin M. Selvern, Barbara Shelley, Joy Shepard, Alan Singer, Rosalind Sonnabend, Molly Staub, Sally Stern, Rebecca Strausberg, Sonia Toner, Etta Walk, Meyer, Mike Weinstein, Jenny Weiss, Irene Weyer, Saul Yeager. Are there additional loved ones that you're remembering this Shabbat? We invite the community to please rise as you are able in sympathy and in fellowship for the Mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah be'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei b'chayachon uv'yomachon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kariv imru amen yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol b'yirchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, ta'amiran be'oma v'imru amen, yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim, halenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen, osei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'asei shalom, alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. You can be seated. A few announcements about exciting things coming up. Tomorrow is the Israel Parade. So here's directions. 12:30, we're going to march together with the Road of Sholem School as part of the Upper West Side delegation. And it doesn't actually say the information about where you meet. So if you haven't signed up, please sign up so that we can make sure to get you the actual directions, because you have to meet at a certain place and then you're released in a heat where you get to walk all together with everybody. So if you haven't signed up and you're going to sign up, actually let me know, because it's tomorrow, so I can make sure to get you that information. And we hope that you will consider joining us in marching. Rabbi Goldberg's going to be there representing our clergy team. Thursday of this week, 7 p.m. It's June. It's Pride Month. It's a tremendously exciting time at Road of Sholem. We always look forward to this time of being able to celebrate and to be able to bring lots of creativity. And this year is really unparalleled. It's an opportunity to hear Cantor Yakino's recital for his graduation. He was unable to give his recital due to COVID. And so this is actually a result of all the study he did for his thesis for ordination. So that's at 7 p.m. on Thursday. And then Friday night is Pride Shabbat. So I hope that you'll join us for one or all of those opportunities to celebrate. And of course, following a little kibitzing and nosh outside, we'll continue in here with Torah study. Again, thinking a lot about grapes today. So I guess I don't know if I should tell you to come if you're hungry or not, but hopefully you'll fill up outside. So we're going to conclude walking outside, Vishamru, page 44, in motion. And again, thank you to everybody who participated in the service, Daniel, Henry, to our new leadership. Justin, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Ariel, it's a pleasure to have you too. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Vishamru 44.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כששת ימים עשה אדוני עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת וינפש שבת וינפש שבת וינפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מורה פרי הגפן. L'chaim. What a beautiful challah. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ בתאוות. Shabbat shalom.
We invite you to join us for text study in the Schnurmacher. Text study in the Schnurmacher. And for anybody who is joining us online, there is a little text study button underneath the screen through which you are live streaming. If you're live streaming on the Road of Sholem website, there's a little button that says text study. And if you click that button, it'll bring you to a series of files, and you can click on NASO 5783, and that is today's text study. Zoom people are watching us through these cameras, if they're watching us. If they're not watching us, then I'm speaking to the ether, which is fine too.
Just the abyss. Do you always make a giant source sheet like this, or like the layout?
Yes,
It's nice.
the only way I do it.
Wow, how do you just do it in
Google Drawings.
I really like this. It's much more readable than like weird numbers of pages.
When I first started,
Yeah.
everybody was squinting.
Yeah.
We need something bigger.
No, this is really
And then
nice.
I like the whole mission style of having
Yeah.
everything around because it's more democratic. You let them read it.
Yeah.
But you don't let them read everything, just a few minutes. And then everybody's operating on the same assumptions. So
Yeah.
this is the only thing you can work with.
No, this is really nice.
People just bring whatever they take.
Yeah. It's also not like, I feel like when you have like a 4-page source sheet, it's like anxiety producing.
Yes, and then you hold the barrel because you have to walk everything.
Yeah, no, this is
Here,
great.
They get to decide the direction.
Yeah, I really like that.
That's the
Cool.
fun part. Anybody staying for text study, we welcome you to join us in the Schnurmacher. Thank you. This one for me.
Did you get one?
Yes, thank you.
This is the classic way of teaching Torah.
Yes. I do admire this source sheet. It looks nice in this way.
It does require work, however.
Bring grapes. I picked up the gooeyest one.
Ooh, go, yeah, go ahead. There'll be plenty of time to spend the first sheet. I gave you a video today. So I kept finding good things.
The names of the people you've chosen are almost a tongue twister.
right. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to talk about grapes with you today. So, it won't surprise anybody that if you're taking any... Yes, we do need Ari here for this. Maybe I should send this to him and tell him that he was mentioned in the space of talking about wine. Ari Hochberg, who is a wine distributor and specializes in wine from Israel. That's why Henry mentioned him. So the reason that I wanted to dig more deeply into this is because it's very clear to me why a Kohen or a Nazir would have to abstain from wine. Wine makes sense because we all know what happens when you drink wine. It loosens you up a little bit and it can impact your judgment. And if you're in a position of, doing something holy, staying sober feels pretty obvious. However, this is what we read in Numbers 6, 2-4. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if any men or women explicitly utter a Nazirite's vow to set themselves apart for Adonai, they shall abstain from wine and any other intoxicant. They shall not drink vinegar of wine or any other intoxicant. Neither shall they drink anything in which grapes have been steeped, nor eat grapes fresh or dried. Throughout their term as Nazirite, they may not eat anything that is obtained from the grapevine, even seeds or skin. And that just seems so curious. Yes, and Sandy? No, it's not a dumb question. So a Nazirite is described and defined in this week's Torah portion as a person who is not a Kohen, who is not of the priestly class, who decides that they want to set themselves aside for God, that they want to take a vow to become holy and to be part of the service of the temple. And they do that by abstaining from every single thing having to do with grapes, not cutting their hair, and they cannot come in touch with a corpse of any kind. And basically, it would be we could think of it more as somebody agreeing to serve as like a monk. That's really more of the paradigm that we have in modern age. Somebody kind of leaving regular society and setting themselves as kind of part of this holy service to God. They're not the ones responsible for offering the sacrifices. That was still the Kohanim, but there was a role for the Nazirite in kind of the larger spiritual function of the community. But to do that, they had to observe very strict rules, and it could be men or women who decided to do that, and it was for a period of time. Only Samson and Samuel are the only two people that we meet who are lifetime Nazirs. Everybody else, it was you chose, and you could then conclude your service. For a woman to choose, however, if she was married or living in the house of her father, the husband or the father could annul her vow upon first hearing it. But if they didn't first hear it, and she kind of did it, and there was no objection, they couldn't annul her vow. So,
Are they considered Jews?
yeah, they're part of the Israelite community. Are they Levites? It doesn't say. It just says if a person in Israel wants to take this vow upon themselves, it would be interesting to consider if a person was a Levite because they already have a service role within the temple, and the question would be, and I'm sure we could look into this, would they still be able to complete those tasks that they were responsible in terms of the maintenance of the temple while also being a Nazir, or were you barred from service because your Levite role was so important to you that you couldn't also take this on? That I do not know. No, the Kohanim are above the Levites in terms of the hierarchy. So, that's a great question in terms of, if you already had an assigned job in terms of relating to temple service, if you could also take on the vow of a Nazir. I don't know, but it's a good question. So there's a lot of text here. I'm going to invite you to take about 5 minutes quietly just to pick a couple of texts to look at, and then we'll come back together. And what we're going to try and explore is, what do we learn from this, emphatic prohibition on grapes? Is there more to the story than just, the wine and the change of, behavior, or is the text kind of telling us something a little bit more profound than that? going to give you one more minute. I know you haven't had a chance to finish it, but hopefully you've at least read 2 or 3 of the citations. So I'm curious, why does the Nazir get instructed not just to keep away from wine like a Kohen, like a priest? Why is there such an emphasis on staying away from grapes altogether? Why something so rigorous? Yeah, Arlene and then Robin.
Is there any possible connection between this and Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, who I read somewhere, or maybe it's a midrash, I'm not quite sure, that they may have had some wine before they presented strange fire?
That is such a cool idea. I love that. I mean, I definitely think you could write your own midrash connecting the concern of wine impacting a person's decision making, because the midrash that you're referring to says that the reason that Nadab and Abihu were prompted to offer the alien fire in the pans was because they were drunk. And so again, I think that comes to this point of grapes are dangerous, wine is dangerous. And so you could be reemphasizing that this idea that maybe that's where we learned why priests and Nazirim were going to be verboten from engaging with wine to begin with, and that could be a reason for justifying that. I'm curious, though, about grapes, too, and seeds and all those other things. That totally justifies the tradition's concern with people in positions of spiritual leadership touching wine, touching an intoxicant. But, like, why the other stuff? That's one of the things I'm so curious about. What's wrong with seeds? What's wrong with a grape skin? I mean, who would want that? I don't know, but like, why is it a problem? But I love your connection to that, because it just reminds us that the intellectual tradition that looks at the text definitely sees wine as dangerous.
So this reminds me of chicken parmesan.
I'm so excited to hear the rest of this thought.
And Steve Carroll is part of the story.
My uncle-in-law.
When I first converted, I went to a community dinner at my temple, and we were supposed to bring food. And I brought chicken parm, because I thought, okay, that's not meat. Like, and so Steve explained it to me as putting a fence around it. That there are things that we decide we don't want to be involved with for whatever reason, and to have an extra protection, we're going to do a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a Jewish tradition there, you know, with like a second day of a holiday to just, make sure we don't even a little bit, you know, in the wrong time do the wrong thing. That this feels like this, don't go near a grape, don't get into the skin, and the seeds, and nothing. Just, you know, that's putting a fence around it and kind of keeping yourself safe from even a chance of doing the wrong thing, I guess.
I think that's such a beautiful comment. It kind of bespeaks this tradition we have of like spiritual enthusiasm, right? Like, not only am I not going to drink wine, I'm not even going to touch the grape. That is such a great reading. And it also speaks to this idea of, you know, we say hamevin yavin, those who know, which is to say that if you are a Jew, you know the rules. So if you are a Nazir, you know the rules and you keep them. And it's that not being conscientious of all the rules that maybe distinguishes whether you're eligible even to participate. Like, you've got to follow directions. I don't know if anybody's ever heard this famous story. I don't know if it was the Rolling Stones or another famous band, but there was a story that they had this very long contract anytime that they would do a concert, because they had a lot of setup and they used a lot of heavy equipment. And buried in their contract was something that said, and we only eat green M&Ms. And the reason they put that there was to make sure that people read the contract, because safety was such a priority for them in setting up the ambitious show that they were trying to put on for their audience. And so I think maybe there's a little bit of green M&M chicken parm happening there, which I love. We'll do Sandy and then Naomi.
I just have a question and kind of a comment. If we just went out to the outer room and we just said Kiddush
Sure did.
with wine, so I don't understand, I don't know, first of all, where that came from, and second of all, doesn't that go against what being holy is?
That's such a great question. So if we use wine to consecrate holy time every time that we mark Shabbat, we're saying blessing over Kiddush, then how do we reconcile this idea that holy people can't touch it and yet the rest of us can? There's actually a commentary in here. I think it's the Kli Yakar. This is Tamar Green Eisenstadt's commentary. There is a very long tradition in Judaism that really de-emphasizes and actually is antagonizing toward any kind of asceticism, right? Like the Jewish people are not here to take vows of poverty and to fast and to deprive themselves unless there's some kind of purpose to it. In my perspective, and I'd be very curious if other people have a different reading on your question, because I think it's kind of personal. The idea of a Nazir and of a Kohen, these people that are doing the facilitation of spiritual experience sacrifice, because they're Klei Kodesh, because they're supposed to be spiritual vessels, their responsibility is actually more to the community and to ensuring that the community can fulfill their obligations to God and the covenant. And to do that, they need to be sober. But everybody else is able to mark holy time by indulging, by relaxing, by engaging with this fruit that really for so much of us represents joy and represents holiness. But you have to be in the hands of capable people with 2 feet on the ground who are not drunk. And that's really how I see it. It doesn't elevate the service of other people as if, a lay person or a Kohen, if somebody is inherently more holy, but someone is set aside like a designated driver to make sure that everything happens safely. So that's the way that I think about both of them being holy, but sometimes it being problematic. I'm curious if anybody else has a different reading. Yeah.
I don't know if people.
Oh, you don't use it, sorry. She's a professor, I believe. I think she's a scholar. I think she might be at JTS. Yeah. Yes, exactly. The priest is actually subject to a less severe responsibility than the Nazir, which kind of makes sense because the priest is a lifelong position. And so if a priest was basically not allowed to touch a grape their entire life, that would be a pretty difficult thing to live into, as opposed to they can enjoy with the rest of their community. They can have wine at their Shabbos table. They just can't have wine when they're in the temple. So yes, it's an excellent observation that the Nazir hopefully could be drawn into this kind of service because it's the one opportunity to be like a Kohen in the community. It's a great observation. We'll have Susan, did you want to comment? And then Arya.
Yeah,
And Naomi, sorry. We're just back on this point, and then you can start a new point, Naomi.
Yeah, so when you were talking about the safety thing, I actually got the mental image of a cruise ship in my head, because you have your passengers on the ship who are on vacation, right? And then you're going to throw alcohol in, right? Because that's what you do on a cruise, or what a lot of people do. Hi. And drunk people on a ship in the middle of the ocean can be really fun, but it can also be very dangerous. So on board that ship, you also have crew members who are not drinking. They might on their off hours, but they're cautioned. You can only imbibe so much, because if there is an emergency, you have to be at your post and ready to go. The captain is certainly not drinking while he's running the ship.
You pray.
We hope. We hope. I mean, there's stories. But the reason that they all do that is because the way that everybody has a good time and the way that you get to enjoy your vacation, if that's how you choose to vacation, is because it's safe. And it's only safe because there's these thousands of people that are ensuring that. And they're doing so by, not
participating in the activities that the passengers are.
I think that that's such an important insight because it's supposed to, I think, draw our attention to the fact that our enjoyment, our worship, the experiences that we have are facilitated by other people in the community who are observing certain protocol. And it's, I think, a reminder to the rest of Am Yisrael, hey, these Kohanim and these Nazirites, they may seem very special, but they're actually giving up a lot to be able to serve you. And so hopefully that gives a little bit more of an equalizing, that it's not just somebody being set aside for Adonai and therefore they're special and they, all the privilege resides with them, because you may remember also that we were all asked to bring sacrifices, and who ate those sacrifices? The people who were in service to the temple, because they themselves weren't entitled to property. And so you could see an antagonism building up. Oh, why do they get to eat my meat? Why do they get to be in the temple? Why do they get to offer all the blessings? Well, there's things that they can't do, and they facilitate all of this for you. So I think it also is reminding us to be conscientious of all of the work that goes in to making this space safe and clean and making it possible for us all together.
So that leads me to ask you a question, which is not my comment, which is, did the Nazarite have responsibility to the community? I thought a Nazarite was just bearing witness, which is, I didn't think that the Nazarite had any communal responsibility to others.
It's a great question. Their responsibility isn't articulated in the Parsha, but we see through Samson and Samuel's story that they actually function either like prophets or like warriors, and so they did do things.
Okay, because your answer just now implies that. But what I was going to say is that you asked a question, and of all these commentaries, only one even gets near to addressing the particular question that you have, and that is, has to do with eating the grape, which the Christians call the apple, which I thought we referred to as the pomegranate.
This is the Zohar text on the bottom left.
But that's the only one that gets anywhere near to answering your question.
Explicitly. I think some of the others are in the ecosystem of reply.
To me, pretty vaguely, but I just wanted to point that out, and I never knew that a grape had anything to do with what they would call the apple. Which
So if somebody didn't read that text, will you just summarize? What is it asserting?
Well, it's asserting that that's what Adam did to become impure, that that's what he had in the Garden of Eden. I'm not saying, hey.
She didn't say it. The Zohar says it.
So, yeah. And I have a little story about drinking wine after. Can I just tell it very quickly?
Sure.
So Steve, my daughter, and I were on a plane sitting in the exit row during a very sad time pertaining to a relative, and we were very upset, and my daughter was crying, etc. And the flight attendant came over and said, will you be able to assume your duties if something happens? And we said, yes, we can turn this on a dime. And then she said, we explained what happened, and she said, my father just died, and I blah, blah, blah. Anyway, at the end, she was very open to trusting us, and at the end of our long conversation, she said, please, I'm going to bring you wine. And that almost consecrated the moment of meeting that we had. And I'm only putting it in that way now that I hear this, that was like sanctifying the trust that we had for one another.
Oh, how beautiful. Thank you for telling us that story. Okay, I think I said Ariel and Myra.
Yeah, I was really curious with the Eisenstadt source that you referred to, that actually being a Nazir is not a desirable state of being or status. And then I was connecting that with the Zohar source, which interestingly only talks about Adam eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, not Eve. But I also thought, this is a hypercorrection for a category of people that are doing something extreme that is not desirable. And I thought that casting was really interesting here.
Yeah. Well, the reason that I appreciated that text, which I'm glad you raised, because I know that was a big one, so I don't know if everybody got through it. This idea in the tradition that if you decide to become a Nazir, you're doing it because there's something wrong with you and you're actually trying to correct a flaw within yourself. Because it's actually, again, the tradition isn't trying to celebrate deprivation. That's really not what Judaism is about, right? We have this one life. We want to live it well. We want to live into our obligations. And so to say that you're going to withdraw in any way is actually not desirable. So the only reason you could do that is because as you're living your normal life, maybe there's something you're not doing very well. And so that's the reason, is that it's kind of a purifying chapter of your life where you get to clarify and get rid of all those distractions and focus on what's good. But in saying, I want to be a Nazir, you're kind of self-identifying as a person with a problem, like checking yourself into rehab. And it's basically a spiritual form of rehabilitation, which the tradition is saying, at least according to the Kliyakar, that we're not celebrating. And if you do that, and this, Naomi gets to the point of not everything is giving you an explicit answer to the question, but I do think that vigilance is a piece of this, right? Vigilance about I'm opting into, yes, and this is the point about staying sober and the point about, all of the reasons of trying to commit to something rigorous is because you're going to observe the rules and you're really going to play by the book. And so that's not necessarily making you out to be anybody special in the Kliyakar's eyes. It's actually making you out to be somebody who's in need of some kind of correction. So that's another way of reading this. Again, that doesn't place the Nazir on such a pedestal, but is a pathway to healing, which I like.
Is it okay if I reference a pagan religion?
Sure.
Well, this reminds me of Dionysus. Mm-hmm. And Edith Hamilton, in her classic work on mythology, says, it aside to all the gods on Mount Olympus, the two most important gods are Demeter and Dionysus. Demeter is the goddess of grain, and Dionysus of wine. And I thought, Motzi and Kiddush.
I love that. That's so great.
And there were other things that were important. Olive oil is important. Why don't we pour olive oil every week?
Mm-hmm.
We
Expensive.
don't. And, she has all kinds of explanations about Dionysus being the god who allows us to escape reality. And of course, it was the festival of Dionysus where Greek theater started, and all our theater as a result. But, and so much about his birth was questionable too, just like here. So I just think that there are people who are in these sort of liminal spaces, and Dionysus was also like the son of Zeus and a mortal, and they help us get to the next place, as you said. And wine and even the grapes and the vines, which, we cut them down and they grow back. There's something magical about them. There's something transformative about this substance and about the people who enable us to access them.
Beautiful. Thank you. I didn't know that about Demeter. I knew Dionysus, but I knew Bacchus, but Dionysus. Wait, is that... No. No, it's those are the Romans or the Greek god? Roman. Greek. So that's Greek. So Bacchus is Roman? Okay. Yeah, but the Greeks conquered the Israelites. So yeah. So maybe we don't know. Maybe it's a little chicken and eggy.
So I just wanted to piggyback off of that because I was just sitting here thinking, because, in my 20-year spiritual journey that took me from Catholicism over to Judaism, we did a lot of roundabout going into other religions and things, and every single faith that at least I've studied has a bread and wine component to it that is an important part of that lifestyle. The Christians have the Eucharist or whatever, communion. We have Kiddush and Motzi, Dionysus and Demeter, and modern day pagans do cakes and ale, which is, cake, bread, not that far. Mm-hmm. So this notion of bread and wine seems to be very important just to humanity as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that it's, again, kind of like Birkat Kohanim, an invitation to find holy that which constitutes your life, your nourishment. We don't necessarily need wine to survive, but we do need bread. And being able to feel a sense that every week Sabbath comes and it's a time to create blessing and it's a time to look up in gratitude. Again, and this Parsha, I think, makes clear in a way that I never would have known if I hadn't really looked at grapes so closely, this sense that at any time that we are celebrating, at any time that we are relaxing or enjoying, someone is working. And I think that is so important because especially in a city like this, where everybody works all over the clock and there's a lot of hustling that has to do to make a life in New York City, if we're working typical hours and we're going out to dinner on a Saturday evening, there's an entire group of people who are making that restaurant run. Same when we go to the theater, same when we go anywhere else. And just to feel a sense of gratitude for the work of those people who may be having their wine while we're at work and enabling themselves and having other people enable them to find joy, that all of that magic that we get to experience in New York City is really a product of a lot of people not being able to touch the grape for a few hours.
You saw my floating hat.
I did.
I really love that, kind of bringing that into the present moment. I was also thinking about, in this ancient period, it was pretty impossible to drink water in almost any context, and the primary beverage is like very watered down wine or beer. And so I'm thinking about that actually brings these people onto an even more extreme category than I was imagining. And then also the avoidance of the grape is avoiding like the entire essence of the thing. And I feel like just the mystical connotations there are really wild.
I think the water really, I hadn't thought of that. Makes it a lot harder to pick things to drink.
In the 20th century, there was no necessarily potable water, and wine was.
Yeah, I mean, plagues. Right. Drinking water. Did I see your children? Oh, yeah. I can give you our final comment.
A very quick comment. This Torah portion corresponds to the scarcity of grapes in New York City. I don't know if anybody's noticed that. Fresh Direct has not had them. Trader Joe's has been out of them.
That's crazy. So now we will all feel much more precious about the grapes that we do find. Absolutely. So if you don't leave this morning's Torah study with anything else, it's to appreciate not only the grapes that you have access to, but when it is that you're allowed to eat them and drink them and touch them. I think for me, first of all, this conversation was incredibly illuminating because it really sometimes, to Naomi's point, you don't go through the commentaries and search the bowels of the internet and find the exact answer to the question that you have. However, it's just never as simple as it seems. And, when I almost didn't make this a Torah study because I thought, is this too obvious, right? Like, okay, people can't have wine, they're in responsible positions, and, again, like the drunk driving kind of analogy, somebody's got to be the designated driver. However, when you look at all of the commentary that is out there and you see the way that people engage with the text and think about it, really the possibilities for what it is that the text is trying to convey are infinite. And for me, that whole level of thinking about vigilance just never would have occurred to me if I hadn't looked at all of these different texts that are really wrestling with, it's actually not that great to become a Nazir. Maybe it even means something flawed about you, but this idea that you're committing to some kind of rigorous protocol, it can have a purifying effect on you. I never would have found that from just like, why can't they have grape seeds? So for me, what's been so affirming about this conversation, which has been so rich, is to think, Julie, even if the question seems obvious, it's worth bringing it to Torah study because you never know what you're going to discover. So thank you all for bringing so much great Torah, wishing you a beautiful Shabbat and a beautiful summer. And you heard the announcements of what's coming up, so please join us during the week.